Hello. Well, welcome to Adorn by Jennifer. And today I'm bringing you along with what I'm doing. And today I'm making dinner. So you are coming along with me as I am making a crock pot soup. And it's one of my family's favorites. And it was actually a wedding gift recipe to me from my sister-in-law, who is also a pastor's wife. Did you know I'm a pastor's wife? I'm a pastor's wife. And it's one of our favorite family recipes. And my husband calls it entertainment worthy. So apparently it's a family favorite. And one of the things that I like to say is it's a second day favorite. So I can serve it to my family the first day, but I personally think it tastes way better second day. So I'm going to show you what we're doing because we're having it tonight for dinner, but I personally think it's a second day, third day yummier. So that's one of my favorites because then I don't have to cook for possibly 2 or 3 days because I think it tastes even different each day. So it doesn't even taste like leftovers because each day it takes on a life of its own. So I'm going to teach you some of my tips and tricks. Even though today isn't Tuesday, I'm going to bring you in on some of my tips and tricks. And yes, if you saw earlier, I showed you some of my favorite pendants that are for sale and some of my goodies. But today, this live is not about that. So I'm going to show you some of my tips and tricks. Okay, I'm getting to it because I don't have very much time. I got to go pick up my kids from school. So I'm literally inviting you into what I was going to have to do anyway. I take a crock pot and I need to turn it on. My crock pot is very loved, so it's off camera because it is not very pretty. It is very gross looking, but it works and it is a family staple. I try to use the crock pot as much as possible. If you have a crock pot recipe that you think is entertainment worthy, will you put the recipe below? Because I'm always looking for more ideas. Also, I like to use these little liners. I highly recommend them because it saves on cleanup afterwards. It's a little expensive, probably unnecessary for landfills, but it sure saves in extra cleanup and all the mess that goes with it. Okay, here's one of my best practices. I buy about, I can't remember off the top of my head right now, I'm not doing the math, but I buy pounds and pounds and pounds of hamburger, about 6 months worth, and I prepare it in one evening, and I put it in 1 pound to 2 pound Ziploc bags in one evening, and I freeze it for 6 months. And so when I go to cook, all I do is thaw it, dump, and I don't have to brown meat for 6 months. I don't have to mess with cleanup, nasty, and I put it in the trash can. Another tip, I keep a little trash basket right next to me when I cook so I don't have to walk all over my kitchen and get rid of things. Another tip and trick, I hate onions, but I think fresh onions, or at least real onions, not like dehydrated onions, work better. So I do the same thing with onions. It's a nasty, nasty mess one day out of pretty much the year, but I buy bags and bags and bags of onions, and I do the same thing. So I have a bag of onions that all I have to do, I freeze the same thing. Now I do recommend freezing them in their own container, even within the Ziploc bags, or your whole freezer smells like onions for a while. You don't want your ice cream to taste like onions, so put it within its own Rubbermaid in the freezer so it contains the nasty smell. But sod that, I zip it closed so that in the trash can it doesn't smell like nasty onions. Okay, so we've got a pound of hamburger. Whew, those onions are stinky. I've got a small onion chopped that I already did in advance. And then the recipe calls for 4 teaspoons of bouillon. So I've got 4, and I like, a lot of flavor. So I kind of am generous on that. I do 4 teaspoons of bouillon. I have 4 cups of water. I like to whisk it. Another tip and trick, I like the Dollar Tree little whisks. They work well in the dishwasher. They're $1.25, at least they were when I got them. Everything seems to be rising in price lately, above $1.25 even there. I whisk it for a hot, quick minute. I set it to the side because I like to pour this over at the end so that it gets everything nice and juicy at the end. But chicken bouillon, ready to go. Boom. Okay. Next thing, make sure my little strainer doesn't disappear. Next thing, I'm trying to go fast because I got to go pick up my kids. Favorite tool ever. I can put the link after I get my kids. The chopper. Okay. It takes up room in the dishwasher, but I put it in my dishwasher and I use it when I use it for many things so I don't have to chop things. I use it my one time when I chop all my onions for the day so I don't have to chop all those little bad boys. And then I also use it when I have a lot of chopping for something like this. It's a very veggie loaded soup. So I need my knife. Ooh, not a serrated knife. I need these were a wedding gift that was very sweet, and every single day I think of the people that gave them to me. So if you're ever looking to get a wedding gift for somebody, get something that every single day they will think of you. And this is a very special wedding gift. Okay, so this, you can see this has a larger grid, and I like my potatoes to be a little chunky, so there's a little texture. So you cut it like in quarters and boom, you're done. Oh, it's very thrilling. If you've had a bad day, you just get your aggression out. And so I don't bore you to tears. I'm just going to do, this recipe calls for 1 potato. Now, another tip and trick for Adorn by Jennifer is that, oh, I did 2 at a time there. Potatoes stretch the budget. They're very inexpensive. They fill the tummy. And look at that, voila, with no effort, hardly at all. That fills the recipe qualification. Now, I think the little tiny potatoes are very hard to peel. Ooh, that was an aggressive one. Get the stress out for the day. Just get her done. It can be loud and annoying, so I'm just going to do a couple of them, but I like to get the runts of the bag, the little tiny potatoes, sorry. I've got mom brain going on. It's been happening a lot lately. Excuse me if I said the wrong word. But I like to get the little guys. That would be very hard to peel if you're doing a different recipe where it calls for peeling. I like to use the little guys for this kind of thing and then use the big potatoes for actual peeling or something like that. But look, boom, I just did all these potatoes that fast. Isn't that amazing? Boom, dump, and you're good to go. Now, I actually have a whole bunch, and just FYI, before I did the video, I already washed them and scrubbed them, so they're all clean, lest you think that I'm feeding my family dirty potatoes. I actually have more to fill this recipe pot because I am all about stretching the budget and using more, but I didn't want to blow your eardrums up with my aggressive pounding skills here. And so I will do that in a minute when we're done. Next ingredient, celery. Now this shows you the lack of my cooking skills when I first got married. The recipe called for 3 celery stalks. And I wasn't sure if that meant this is a stalk or the whole bushel was a stalk. Honestly, I'm not sure what that means even to this day. Did you notice that I just changed out the grid? It was that easy. These are much smaller because if my kids knew that there was celery in this recipe, they probably wouldn't eat it. So I like to disguise it into little itty bitty chunks. And they have no idea that there's actually celery in this recipe. It's a good filler for the belly, good roughage, and that's what we do. So, what was I saying? Oh, back to stocks. So make a note in the comments below. Is A a stock or is B a stock? The entire cluster, is that a stock? Or is it just, is the single flute A a stock or is the entire cluster B a stock? Let's do a testing on everyone's cooking skills because I honestly am not sure. But again, if I'm gonna buy celery and my kids won't eat it individually, which of course I will because I think it's a very healthy snack. Add a little dollop of peanut butter, you got a good protein, got a good filler. But this is what I'm thinking the recipe calls for, but I'm not gonna waste the entire, whatever this would be called if that's not the stock. So I personally add the entire bunch, whatever it's called, maybe it's a stock. I add the whole thing, but again, I don't want to explode your eardrums because I want you to keep following me. I want you to make sure that you hit following at the top. So I will do that later, but you can see I've got that. Now, the kids aren't super thrilled about carrots either. I have these little baby carrots that I like to use for our salads. Don't judge. If you do all the organic stuff. This is just what I had in my fridge. But you keep chopping. Do you see how easy this is? You just get it out. Get it done. Even you can recruit your kids. They might enjoy doing this. If they're fighting with each other, they can come and just get it out with a chopper. So you get the idea. So you get your little combination, you do your thing, you do you. And really, even though the recipe calls for 2 carrots, these little mini carrots, I'm not even really sure what the ratio would be, how many mini carrots would equal a real carrot. But you can see how simple it is. You clip the top off, you just scoop it down in, voila. Okay, back to the recipe. We've done the onion, we've done the celery, we've done the carrots, we've done the potatoes. Now, another example of my absent-minded mama brain is that I thought I was opening whole tomatoes when I was making salsa recently, which I have a really great salsa recipe I'd love to share with you. If you're interested, comment, yes, do share the salsa, or comment something like you're interested, and I will do that in the future. One of my dear local friends shared that with me before we got married, and she gets all the awesome credit because it is also a family favorite. But I thought I was opening up a can. Have you ever done that where you're not paying attention to the label and you open it up and you're like, oh, when you open it up, you're like, that is not what I thought I was opening. So I opened up diced petite tomatoes, and I didn't want to throw it out, but I didn't have a plan for the day, and I didn't want to leave the can in the refrigerator. So I opened it up and I decided, okay, well, I got to make this soup because this is part of the recipe. So this is petite canned tomatoes. That goes in the crock pot. Voila! There we go. We've got potatoes, we've got celery, we've got carrots, and I just touched my hair, which is not a good cooking thing, but it's from my family, so they'll get a little extra protein today. We are going to do 1 teaspoon of pepper. So that's pretty easy peasy. And I will tell you a little secret. I personally think this recipe does well with extra pepper and extra salt, but I do not add it at this point. I let everybody add it at the end, because at the end, this recipe absorbs moisture. So again, day 2, day 3, I think it tastes the best, but I also think it absorbs things. So go ahead and add salt and pepper later, because you don't want to over add it at this stage. You can always add more later. Okay. And then we've already added the ground beef, and you can add 10 ounces of frozen vegetables. But again, I would prefer to just add the potatoes, add the extra carrots and all that stuff at this point, because my kids get really freaked out when there's a frozen green bean, well, a green bean from the frozen mixed bag, and they don't get super thrilled when there happens to be a pea floating around. So I just load it up with potatoes and all that good stuff at this point so that they don't complain to me when they see a frozen green bean from the frozen bag flying around in here. So you do it however you want, but that's the basic premise. And knowing me, I get a little scatterbrained if you can't tell. So I will read the recipe one more time, make sure I didn't forget anything. And then you put the lid on. Voila. It's literally, oh, wait, no, you got to add all the little juicy juice. You just pour that. That's kind of been frothing and sitting here. It looks like a adult beverage of some kind, which I'm not promoting at this point, but that's what it looks like. And you just pour it over your pot at this point, and you let it sit for like a couple of hours. I'm going to turn the camera off in just a moment. And then after I get my kids, I'm going to do the step B. And then it simmers a couple more hours, and then it's dinner time. And then it will be great because the potatoes will tenderize and we'll have dinner. There will be a whole entire crock pot because I always make it as full as I can so we have leftovers for a couple of days, because truly this is like it's at its peak on day 2, day 3. So I make sure I make lots of it. And if your family doesn't like leftovers, they will, I just got a hiccup again, sorry. They will love this on day 2, 3, I promise, because this is better on day 2, 3. And then, yeah, that's what you do. But, so that's that. That's how it works. Okay. Rewind my brain. Because this is social media and I didn't want to explode your eardrums, I'm going to go back and finish, whether this is a stock or a group, I'm going to finish my chopping. I also mentioned, I put this in the dishwasher. I kind of dishwash everything except my knives and my pots and pans because that's just this present reality. And I don't do my super, super nice china, but otherwise pretty much everything goes in the dishwasher. But this is how easy it is to clip it out. And then I actually have this little cleaner thing from a different device that I had, but you do have to clean out the innards from the chopper. You do want to make sure that you might need a toothpick if you don't have one of these little guys. Sometimes you can find these in the thrifting department. You might look at it and be like, what in the world is that? But it just helps you clean out, or get a toothpick or something to just clean out the guts of your little doodah here. And then I just stick it in the dishwasher like this, stick this in the dishwasher, stick these in the dishwasher. It takes a lot of space. That's why I try to use it only when I'm going to do a lot of different choppings. If I'm only chopping one potato, it's not worth it to me personally, but this is just my own perspective. But anyway, I highly recommend this. I actually bought it for my mom and my mother-in-law for Christmas one year. I try to give them my favorite things, and this definitely, I also hosted a favorite things party for all of our pastors' wives and my neighborhood one year. Did it for our neighborhood, and I gave that out as one of my favorite things because I love this thing. It saves so much work, and it's like perfect little squares. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. I gotta go get my kids in a minute, so I gotta finish chopping, but I'm gonna finish chopping. And then the second step, the next step, you got to do this next step because this is like the secret sauce to this whole recipe, is creating the roux. I feel very French when I say that. Okay, the roux is literally 1 stick of butter. And this is what you do after a couple of hours. So let it simmer and you add this liquidy stuff. Okay, so rewind. Let's start at the very beginning. You cut, chop, add all the choppy things. Then you add this frothy looking water that has your beef bouillon in it. And that sits for 2 to 3 hours on high. Then this is the secret. You melt 1 stick of butter in the microwave and don't blow it up. So like 30 seconds with a paper towel on top so you don't have to clean your whole microwave. And then this is how you do it. This is how you create a roux. I feel so fancy saying a roux because then you got a liquidy thing. You want to do it in a microwave safe bowl. And I would recommend like a glass thing like this where you can pour it. Then you get a half cup of flour. I hope that's right. Half cup of flour. And then you get a spoon. And you literally do 1 spoon at a time, or you just dust a little bit of flour in there, just a little bit at a time, and you stir it. And then you do a dusting again, and you stir it. And dusting again, stir it. And you keep doing that until you are out of your flour, but just a little bit at a time. You just keep adding, stir, adding, until you're done with all your flour. And that creates what they call a roux. And it's nice, a creamy concoction. Once you create that roux with all the flour and the butter, then you add it to your soup, the rest of your goods, and then you stir it in really good, and then you close it back up for 2 or 3 more hours. That, my friends, is the secret sauce. That is what creates the restaurant-worthy, luxurious yumminess. And you will make everyone think that you are the most amazing person, cook, chef, whatever, adorning food prepper ever. You put your beads on, you put your necklace on, and they are going to think that you are the next most amazing internet guru ever. Right. So that, my friends, is cooking with Adorn by Jennifer today. I gotta fly. Ta-ta! Let me know if you like this.